Happy Halloween, everybody. I'm Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley and Drew Mentak. We are Irish Illustrated, and this is the Irish Illustrated Insider Podcast, bi-week edition on a Thursday. I'm going to talk about a variety of topics, some of the stuff that we've been working on during the week. Notre Dame basketball open, men's and women's last night in exhibition fashion. We'll talk about that a little bit. And it appears that Notre Dame will be opening with Miami next year, so that'll be interesting way to get things rolling in 2025. But let's talk about where Notre Dame is. Look, we look at these four opponents and they're very beatable. Florida State is a bad football team right now. Virginia's a pretty bad football team. Army's got a whole bunch of fancy stats, and they have played, like we talked about Navy's schedule. The Army schedule has been much worse than that, I think, at this point. They haven't played somebody like Memphis. And then USC at USC, Notre Dame's lost 7 of the last 10 there. So we'll get to that. But Tim, your thoughts on where Notre Dame is and where Notre Dame is with these opponents coming up?
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of jokes about jinxes with Riley Leonard interceptions, so I'm going to go ahead and throw the other jinx out there. 3 weeks ago, when I said I think Notre Dame will lose another game after they beat Louisville, and then I doubled down and said there's a 14% less chance that Notre Dame will lose another game after they won another. I think Notre Dame's going to go undefeated now. But I think the hardest game will indeed be what I said and what Tim Priester said. I'm positive. I got to look up Drew's. If they were to lose a second game, Priester and I both said it would be USC back in August.
I think so. True.
And I took a quick look. Not only do they not win there, they don't even cover there. So, Tim, since Lou Holtz, this was in Monday Musings, they're 6-12 against the spread, whether they're favorite or underdogs at USC. They just don't play as well out there.
And when they win, when they win, they don't. It's not like, okay, Notre Dame's good, USC's USC's good, or Notre Dame's good, USC isn't. Notre Dame wins by 17. It doesn't happen out there, Drew.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, even though USC's 4-4, they still they've just blown some games they should have won too. Like, they're actually play, statistically, like if you look at the advanced metrics, like ESPN's FPI, SP plus, or FEI, like they're still ranked as the top 20 team. Like most places view them as somebody who plays well. They just lose games by like 3 points to Penn State. I think their biggest loss of the year is 7 points. So they've really, I saw something a few weeks ago, like they're 3 or 4 plays away from being 7-1 or 8-0. Like they just can't find a way to win some of these games.
Yeah,
that's dangerous.
Miller Moss is a solid quarterback. Woody Marks is an excellent running back. Their stats are up and down. They had, we were talking about Zachariah Branch the other day. He's done very little really this year. He's only averaging like 10 yards a catch, 29 receptions. I can name 4 other guys that have been more productive for them at wide receiver. So, but one step at a time. Florida State's awful. I mean,
I was going to say we don't have to take one step at a time.
No, we don't. But you're right. But Florida State is. I used 13 different categories, and I did this during the first bye week, and did again now just to see where they were. In their best category out of those 13 on offense, they're ranked 92nd in the country, and that's turnovers lost. They're 92nd in the country. Everything else, they're in the 100. I mean, they're literally 131st or 134 out of 134 teams offensively. They've had 3 quarterbacks. Uyunglele had hand surgery at the beginning of the month. We don't know whether he'll be back or not. It doesn't seem like it really matters, one way or another.
Well, he's worse than the others, so it matters.
Well, he is, but the other 2, Brock Glenn is completing like 45% of his throws, and Luke Kromenhoek, who came in and had 71 yards rushing, had a 42-yard run last week against Rutgers. He's completing 42% of their passes. Collectively, they've been sacked 24 times. They're awful. They are awful offensively.
Dave's going to kill him, but Kromenhoek at least tries and runs around.
Well, that's what, right. I want to see what they do. They host North Carolina this weekend, so I'm interested to see who plays quarterback for them.
Virginia. Yeah, I think I saw stuff on like Twitter about how them hitting some down the field passes. Like, oh, maybe they're good. And I agree. I looked at their stats today, and I was like, oh, they're completing 40% of their passes. People are just grasping at straws and signs of things to hold on to at this point, I think, for that team.
Get this. Okay, get this. They scored 21 points against Georgia Tech in the opener. That is their season high, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, I have found a spot. If it happens 7 times, the game could be close. Florida State, according to FEI Advanced Metrics, is the third best special teams in the country. Notre
Oh,
Dame is 60th. So here we go.
Their punter is on like all the midseason All-American teams, so that I'm sure that plays a factor
oh,
into it.
and Ryan Fitzpatrick, their kicker, I don't think has missed, if I
Well,
have
see,
that right.
it's a 6-6 game. There's trouble.
If he kicks 7 field goals against Notre Dame, that'll give him a season. They'll tie the season high for points. I look. I don't want to. I don't think we can jinx that one.
No, I was gonna say Notre Dame's gonna kill him.
I really don't. I really don't. I mean, Notre again. It always comes down to you can play 3 different ways. You can play great and kill somebody. You can play poorly and lose or almost lose, and you can play mediocre and it's a game. You know, it's a game most of the 4 quarters, but they're bad. I mean, they're bad. And can you imagine? I mean, Mike Norvell wins 23 games in the last 2 years, and they can't get out of their own way.
Yeah.
Anyway,
If we're doing metrics, I would like to point out USC is the 12th ranked offense. Notre Dame's 15. They're the 32nd ranked defense. Notre Dame is number 2, which is a big difference. And their special teams are like Notre Dame's 46th and 60th. So, I mean, 32nd ranked defense out of USC is not bad.
no, it's not. And their Moss is throwing for almost 300 yards a game. So, and we know that Marks can
Right.
do some really good hitting. I mean, that guy's rushed for well over 2,000 yards in his career. He was at Mississippi State. I think Drew has it correct that, I mean, they lost by 7 at Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that's their biggest loss of the season was that loss at Minnesota.
They lost in overtime to Penn State, and they really did. What was it? I think it was a Minnesota game where like they held Minnesota like 2 of 11 on 3rd down. They still lost.
Yeah, it's weird.
Just it's crazy.
Yeah,
Army is
LSU, Michigan, Florida. I mean, LSU, Michigan, Penn State, Minnesota. This is a real schedule they've played. That's why they just can't get out. I mean, they're obviously like it points to coaching a little bit when you can't nail one of these down.
They lost to Michigan by giving up 32 yards of passing. Like they've had some weird games that they've managed to fall apart in, or I don't know, just got behind early, I think, in that one. But
some of my favorite Army stats here, and again, they're littered throughout the top of offense and defense among these 5 teams, Notre Dame and their 4 opponents. However, their FBS opponents, this is their FBS opponents ranking in pass efficiency offense. 115th, 124th, 96th, 98th, 110th, 90th. I mean, of course they're not throwing the football well against Army. Here's the other thing. In addition to Lehigh, a non-FBS team, they've played Florida Atlantic, Rice, Temple, Tulsa, UAB, and East Carolina with a combined record of 14-32. They truly have played nobody.
Yeah.
Whereas Navy had at least played Memphis and got in a battle with them and gave up a bunch of points and had to outscore them, and they did.
I'm still concerned because we ran through this prior. I mean, I'm not concerned about Army passing on Notre Dame. I'm saying that when you look at who Notre Dame has played to, their Louisville is pretty good, and A&M. 7 teams are terrible on offense. Or I'm sorry, 6 teams are terrible on offense with 2 more to come. They've really not played. I think Notre Dame has a great defense. I'm just saying that I feel like USC is going to be the best offense they've faced in terms of. Navy would have had more points if they didn't fumble 7 turnovers, but Notre Dame's numbers are a little inflated, even though they're very, very good on defense. I think when you get into the final 8, I will actually, for the first time, question how they will hold up now that they don't have Benjamin Morrison and Boubacar Traore and Jordan Botelho. That's what I'm trying to put out there. That they played some crappy offenses.
Yeah, I mean, we can say that Leonard Moore's great, and he's going to be great. There's no doubt about it. But you still don't have Benjamin Morrison. You still don't have Traore or Botelho. And like if you're going to go on the road against USC, you're probably going to feel it that you don't have those guys. If you're going to make it into the playoffs, you're definitely going to feel at some point that you don't have those guys.
Yeah, and against USC, if there's one mistake that Moore makes that Morrison wouldn't have, that's down the field, like that could be something that causes a difference. Even if he plays really well, there could just be something from experience and, technique and stuff that
Yeah.
gets in his way that does make a difference. So
Malachi, is it Malachi or Micaiah? Pardon me, I've been trying to get names right. It's Mackay Lemon is a wide receiver for USC who's kind of emerged as their go-to guys, averaging 15 yards a catch. He's only has a couple touchdowns, but and then Jacoby Lane as well. Zachariah Branch I mentioned only averaging Branch has averaging 10.4 yards a catch, and he hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Deuce Robinson's been a downfield guy, so they've got some guys, and Miller Moss can throw it. When we saw him in the bowl game last year when he lit it up, it's like, okay, maybe they've got somebody that can follow Caleb Williams, and he's done a nice job. He's done a really nice job. I do want to get in before we get into segment two. I do want to talk about Notre Dame's recruiting weekend coming up with Florida State, and you need to go to Irish Illustrated to see everything that Eric Thomas has written about that. He has a list of all the guys that will be coming in for that game. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 verbally committed players in the class of 2025 that will be here for the Florida State game. It's running back Justin Thurman, wide receiver Elijah Burris, athlete Antavius Richardson, defensive lineman Dominic Hulak, and safety Brandon Logan, who Brandon Logan I think is a real sleeper in that class. But anyway, those guys will be in town. And it's my understanding that virtually everybody that's coming in here, or maybe everybody that's coming in for the Florida State weekend, they're a take. So if they're
Yeah.
here, it's some and they want to commit, Notre Dame will take it. I don't know that for 100% certainty, but I think that I get that from a pretty good source. Some of the guys coming in the Notre Dame is still looking at the 2025 class. Florida commit defensive lineman Jalen Wiggins. Of course, tight end Andrew Olish, the Michigan commit. Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng, who is uncommitted. Derek Meadows, the LSU commit, is going to make a visit to Notre Dame, which I find very interesting. Madden Farama won't be there, but he, of course, is still on Notre Dame's list in 2025. So at this point, it's pretty much the elite that they're looking at in that class. And then 2026, we'll have another athlete, Jet Washington, who's a teammate of Derek Meadows. Also wide receiver Connor Selman, and linebacker Thomas Davis Jr. and linebacker Tank King. So it's a good group of guys coming in. Under the circumstances of Florida State's level of ability, the recruiting visits rank up the top at the excitement of that game for Notre Dame.
I think it'll be a good crowd because Notre Dame's 7-1 coming off a bye. Florida State's tickets were Notre Dame purchased Florida State tickets 8 months ago. The fans are coming in for this game. It's a night game. It'll be a good atmosphere. And I think it's good they're playing Florida State as opposed to Virginia. Notre Dame fans will be up for Florida State just by seeing that uniform out there more than they would Virginia. I think it'll be a really, really good crowd. And we're going to have a question on this on why it's a night game or still a night game. But this is a great opportunity for Notre Dame. These recruits aren't paying attention to everything Florida State does. Go out and kill Florida State. It's better than killing Virginia. Like this is or Navy even in their eyes.
yeah, I agree. I think the name brand of Florida State matters. Like you're right. Might know they're good, but they're not good this year at Florida State, but they don't know that Georgia Tech is better necessarily. Like they're not paying attention to some of those details. So it's a big name. Like you said, it's at night. They do some special things with like the LED lights and stuff in that games too that I think usually gets a big rise out of recruits and stuff. So I think it's still a good time. And I think blowout wins are probably good because then the coaches can kind of focus on the recruits a little easier after the game and stuff like that too. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's still a name brand, and they won 13 games last year and probably should have been in the playoffs or certainly had a legitimate beef to say that they should have been in 23 wins in the last 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, we can pump it up, man. We can try to pump it up. It's always good though to have a name brand like that coming to town. I want to wrap up segment one, just real briefly talking about the men's and women's basketball teams. Both had exhibition games last night. The women won 101-41 over Davenport. Leah Tu King, the transfer from Pittsburgh, I think is going to be really, really good. 27 points, 14 rebounds. They beat a team, Davenport, so they weren't really very competitive. Also, a transfer from Marquette, Liza Carlin. She played 6 points, 5 rebounds, and the return of Olivia Miles from injury. She played 30 some minutes, 15 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, just missed a triple double. And of course, Hannah Doggo, 31 points, 7 rebounds, 10 of 10 from the line, 10 of 13 from the field. So they start off well. Exhibition game, not a ton of competition. Notre Dame men's played in Fort Wayne. They played Purdue Fort Wayne. They won 91-54. 14 of 28 from 3-point range. Braden Shrewsbury. We talked to John Bryce was there last night. We tried to get him to join us here today, but he's in the airport and he's got a bad connection. So he gave me some information on this, and I'll try to keep it short and to the point. We'll talk football in the second segment. But Braden Shrewsbury said has really fine-tuned his body. He's in better shape, or he's a trimmer version of himself. 18 points, 7 of 12 shooting, 4 of 7 from 3-point range. Marcus Burton, 18 points, 7-11 shooting, 6 assists, 6 turnovers. He had 4 of them like within the first 6 minutes of the game. So it was a little bit sloppy, but had 18 points in 26 minutes. J.R. Konechny came in and hit a couple 3-pointers. He had 11 points. I want to see, well, first of all, Sir Muhammad, who was the first guy off the bench. He came in to replace Tay Davis. Dished out a couple assists right away, had 4 assists. He missed all 3 of his shots, but I think a couple of those rolled around and just didn't fall for him. We were wondering about him because he missed a lot of time, a lot of practice. But it sounded like he looked really good last night and had a presence to him and was the first guy off the bench. I don't want to go too much deeper in it, but Notre Dame came out pretty sharp, had a bunch of turnovers, fouled a whole bunch. But other than that, Micah Shrewsbury was talking about wanting more tempo, and they feel like they can do that this year. So it's a deeper team. It'll be interesting to watch the Irish develop this year. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by ND alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your purchase sets. esqclothing.com. We'll be back in a second. Burning Up the Board, segment 2.
If you're coming to a game this season, you have to check out Game Day Your Way, Notre Dame's tailgate service provider. Game Day offers everything you need, including tailgate gear, catering, and even beverage delivery right to your spot. And their Irish Express transportation from Chicago allows you to tailgate while you travel to their all-inclusive party zone in South Bend. Let Game Day deal with all the hassle so you can focus on the fun. For tailgates, tickets, transportation, and more, visit GameDayYourWay.com.
Welcome back to segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. Our first question, Bobby 1556, and it is a timely one. What do you guys think of starting at Miami out of the gate next season? Marcus Freeman has never started the year at home. It'll most likely be CJ Carr's first start. I know Notre Dame wants to play tough schedules, but don't you think it would have been a little smarter to maybe start next season at home against an easier opponent?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I get it. Yes, it would be easier if they start at home next year against an easier opponent. In 2026, I believe they're slated to go to Lambeau Field and play Wisconsin to open the season. It gets easier after that. I think they open with Purdue the following year. Would that be right? Purdue? Are they going to play Purdue more than twice? I'm not sure that that's right. But anyway, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's you have, when in doubt, you have obligations to television. And, Notre Dame was supposed to play Miami this year. I'm not exactly sure everything that went into that delay or that cancellation. I don't know if Miami picks up where they left off here in 2024, but
What
it's
do you
a
feel about
challenge.
playing Miami instead of Army? And you're a Notre Dame fan right now in the penultimate game of the season at Miami.
that's what it would have been, right? That's where it was
Hmm.
originally slotted. Yeah, you wouldn't feel great about that.
I
So
think you're damned if you do. I don't like Notre Dame doesn't want to do this, and TV is driving it, and it
yeah.
stinks that Notre Dame has to
Yeah.
start at Miami. I don't think there is a damned if you don't. It's good if you don't. It's an unfortunate situation,
Well,
really.
I'm talking the schedule in general, which people don't, they don't like it this year because Florida State's lousy, and some of the teams that you were, counting on to be better haven't been. Maybe that's not necessarily true. It's
Yeah, I
certainly
don't.
in the
Yeah,
case of Florida State, but um,
Navy and Army helped make the schedule look a little better than in some ways than we thought it would for them. But yeah, it's definitely Florida State falling off definitely hurts the schedule this year.
yeah, but
So
then then
agree.
you beat Navy by a bunch, and so all of a sudden it's not a key win, even though the Associated Press moved Notre Dame up to number 8, which I'm still surprised at. But no, it's not great. I'd like to have a conversation about Pete Bavacco about this. It's just broke yesterday. Actually, I first heard from John Bryce, and then it became national news as reported by the Miami Herald. But it's not ideal. It's not ideal. I mean, it's one thing to play Miami, and it's another thing to play them at Hard Rock, which Tim, you were there 7 years ago, which I unfortunately missed that game. But that won't be easy.
no. I'm sure they would have loved Pitt or NC State or starting at home against the worst team you could possibly find
Well,
to
right, and
upset the rest of the
Pittsburgh is on,
schedule.
yeah, Pittsburgh is on the schedule next year,
Yeah.
which looks a lot harder now because they're 7-0 going into at SMU this weekend. Um,
Well, and what I think is interesting too now is that they're, starting next year at Miami Labor Day. I don't think they have a September 6th opponent, but then they play Texas A&M and M and then Purdue and then who's not good, then Arkansas, who the FPI has as the number 25 team right now, and then Boise State, who they have as the number 20 team right now. So in the first 6 weeks of the season, they could play four, top 25 or top 25 teams when I think will play three all this year. So it's definitely
Arkansas is
front loading the
if
season.
Arkansas is
And
not good, it's going to be a hornet's nest. That is going to be absolutely insane. Arkansas
yeah, because
fans were coming to come to Notre Dame in 2020. Trust me on this. That place is going to be going ballistic for Notre Dame.
Notre Dame has never played Arkansas, and that's a big part of those fans absolutely crushed when they couldn't come to Notre Dame a couple years ago. And then you're absolutely right, Tim, going down there. Obviously none of us have ever been in that stadium, and I mean, we're always looking forward to those kind of atmospheres to see what they're like, but it'll be tough. Not ideal for Notre Dame. Very surprised to hear that they're opening at Miami. One step at a time. They're going to have to deal with that next year. Question from Irish McCarthy. What challenges does Florida State present? Obviously, they are terrible this year, but are there certain elements of their team that could cause Notre Dame trouble? We kind of touched on this.
Yeah, I think the punter and the kicker, as we said, are the key to this one.
No doubt about it. They have the number 40 pass defense in the country. They have the number 27 red zone defense in the country, which is, always a challenge, but the rest of it's bad, man. The rest of it's bad.
I don't think we need to expound anymore on.
Okay,
Florida
well,
State.
we don't.
We have a whole series coming up on Florida State next week.
Yeah, but let me just, I'll say it again next week. They have forced 3 turnovers, the whole season, 1 fumble, 2 interceptions. Their third down defense is bad. They've given up 10 touchdown passes and had the 2 interceptions that I mentioned. Yeah, they're bad. We don't have to, although there is a question connected to that here.
I say we skip it.
No, that's actually the next question. Go ahead, Tim.
From BWAC 29. Now that Leonard's passing has started to improve in consistency, which wide receivers are meeting, exceeding, or falling short of preseason expectations? Who needs to play better if this team wants to win one or more playoff games? Let's start with that one.
Okay. Yeah, I just did the first story I started with this week was, and I usually do this when there's a bye week, just wide receiver targets or pass catching targets, just to see where everybody is. And Bo Collins is the number 1 target by twice as much as anybody else. The problem is he's only caught 56% of the passes targeted at him. I'm not saying that's necessarily his fault, but the fact is Leonard throws it to him a lot, and the percentage of receptions is pretty low. Whereas Mitchell Evans, Jaden Greathouse, Jeremiah Love, and now suddenly Jordan Faison look to be better options, more consistent options, a higher percentage throw than it has been for Collins.
Yeah, I agree with Collins here. I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I feel like there's been, especially more recent weeks, one drop a game where it's kind of almost an easier catch and he just doesn't come down with it, or it's kind of in a key situation. So I think, even though, like you said, he definitely leads the team in receiving and he's done a lot of good things, he has some moments where he just kind of lacks consistency, or he does some things that make you kind of scratch your head, like not, on that interception against, was it Georgia Tech a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
where he just kind of seemed to give up on it and maybe could have made a play. Not that that interception was his fault, but he just does some things that I think you'd like to see him not do as a senior and a guy they clearly look to as a leader in that room.
He has concentration drops, which is not something
He does.
you can't have that going forward. So he'd be on that list. I did a full story on who can reasonably improve in November. I did every player on the roster actually and wrote down the ones that could improve. And some people took it wrong that I put Jadarian Price in the can reasonably improve a lot. I had him I had a givens section, like, Jeremiah Love isn't going to reasonably improve a lot more in November.
Yeah,
like,
he's caught 16 on 19.
So I took Jadarian Price, the running back, can reasonably improve a lot. And I bring that up because Jordan Faison, Chris Mitchell, Jaden Harrison, Jaden Greathouse, all of these guys can reasonably improve as pass catchers in November. Faison we'll get to in a second. But the number one, Tim, on the team, and it's not his fault, but he's a year removed now and he's back. There's an All-American possibility in Mitchell Evans in November. He could be a November All-American, and that would be the thing for the passing game. I think Chris Mitchell catches 2 more balls. It's not the same thing as Mitchell Evans becoming Mitchell Evans.
Yeah, Mitchell could improve from a percentage-wise, and certainly Collins. But you're right. I mean, they just need to, and you hope that Mitchell Evans can come out of this bye really, really hitting the ground running, so to speak. Was it you or JB that said he was more explosive?
But yeah, we both. Yeah,
I thought I agree.
Faster,
I mean, if you again for those of us that rewatch the game, and that jumped out at me. But Faison, a healthy Faison could make a huge difference because he was targeted 5 times. He really had a drop on that. It was a diving slant that he probably should have come up with. But then he caught the next 5 thrown to him. One was negated by the 25-yarder. But yeah, Evans is a go-to guy. We know he can carve out space. Greathouse, when Greathouse was healthy last year, he was a high percentage throw. Love is a high percentage throw, even though some of those tunnel screens haven't worked. So there's a bunch of guys there. But the 2 guys that need to improve the most, to answer the question, are Collins and Mitchell.
This question is related to it. M. Lindbergh, how important is Jordan Faison to the passing game moving forward? Seems everyone is more effective when he's on the field. I just want to read the quote so people don't think it's us saying this. I want to see Faison back healthy 100% because I think he's a dynamic piece to our offensive unit that we've been missing quite a bit. I want him more involved in who we are and what we are, and that's Mike Denbrock.
And that's why I think that Faison, when Mike Denbrock says that, and then he has a game like that, Faison has a chance to be more targeted than Bo Collins down the stretch, or at least comparable to him, because Collins has doubled up on everybody. But yeah, no doubt. I mean, and he was dynamic last week. That the ball across the middle where it was on his back hip, where he had to kind of pirouette in order to secure it and then stay on his feet and run. Yeah, that's a dynamic player. I know there's some people on our message board that don't want to acknowledge that Jordan Faison's good because he was a walk-on. Whatever. He's really, really good, and they need him. That's a guy that, you want to talk about, okay, what takes them to the next level in the passing game? A performance like we saw last week, when Notre Dame really needs it against a quality opponent moving forward.
Yeah, and I think even going back to, I think I mentioned this previously, but like going back to the first game of the season, I think before he got hurt in the middle of the second quarter against A&M, he'd already played like 20 snaps. I know that he only had maybe 1 catch at that point, but I think he was always going to factor in significantly with the pass game when healthy. And he just, I think last week was the first time we really saw him kind of have a lot of his abilities back to a place where he could be really productive.
Next question is from Club Fred 90. Does Notre Dame really need a stadium DJ? Have you seen this at other stadiums? There's a reason I read that question and did not answer first.
I, I like her performance overall. I know it may be
She's
getting
not
to
the
the point.
DJ though, really, right? She's the person that sets up the
Oh,
DJ.
okay. Oh, I misread it. A DJ at a stadium. Have we seen that? We've seen that, haven't we?
If we do, it's not as lame.
I want to say NC State, but I don't know. I don't know. Look, the atmosphere in Notre Dame Stadium, excuse me, it's not good, man.
I
It's just
think
not good.
I don't want to go. I'm only going to use 50 words on this at most, and I'll cede my spot to Drew. They're caught in the middle of trying to stay with tradition and become modern. They're very poor at the modern part. They have hamstrung the guy that chooses the music. We know this to be true. He wants to do different things. And the feel of blue gold game, let's talk to kids and see little fun things all the time, is just really weird at major sporting events. It's more than 50 words.
Yeah. So I talked to my wife. Actually, she went to Notre Dame. Has been a lifelong fan. She had a stretch of 3 weeks earlier this year where she went to a Notre Dame game, a game in the Big House for Michigan, and then a game at Boise State. And she said definitely Notre Dame was the worst atmosphere. Of the three, Boise State, she said, was the best. I think from like a music perspective, her perspective was like they have a lot of their songs aren't designed to like get people pumped up and cheer. Like they don't necessarily, sometimes they play songs that maybe she feels like people can kind of vibe to or they like, but they're not designed to like get you to stand up on third down. She notes that they don't really play Crazy Train like they used to in certain songs that she felt like really incited people to like get up and do stuff. So I figured, so I'm not necessarily paying attention to the crowd as much. I kind of would share her perspective as a fan and somebody who's been going to these games all her life and other college football games as well.
I mean, beyond the DJ, I don't understand. I mean, I think it's really sweet and cute that you have little kids on there, but who are you, where you're kid at band
I would move it
who
away
are
from
you?
the fourth quarter, though. I would move it away from the most important part of every college atmosphere is the song in the fourth quarter that gets everybody going. Like
But
you
who are
stop
we
everything.
appealing to? Who are we appealing to? Not interviewing, but having a light moment with a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old. Who is that appealing to within the stadium? I don't understand
I think
that.
you just move it. I agree with you. But if you moved it to the first time out of the first quarter, I wouldn't even care. Like it's just a different.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
different.
even have a rule that only do it when the offense is on the field. Like you're quieting everybody
Right.
to listen to a child talk on the screen. Like that's a good time to make people be quiet. Make sure you just say have a rule you can't do it when the defense is coming out.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that one.
this is a topic that we're not going to address again with a question because it's, we're insulting somebody at Notre Dame about how they have
Well,
chosen to run the operation,
I don't
and
think it's the person in charge of the music, though. That's at least from everyone
yeah, I
that
know,
I've talked to.
I know, I veered off from that, but the whole atmosphere is just, it's just not working. They need a comprehensive reevaluation of it going into next season. If it, I mean, if that matters, to them, it
Yeah,
must.
It might not. Yeah.
I will
There's
say
greater
that
problems next season. Speaking of which, John Delvec 3 brings one up. As of now, is the interior defensive line depth good enough to hold up for the 2025 season? Or is making a run at a transfer, or maybe even two, a preferable path to go down? This is a bigger deal than the DJ and the VJ and everybody else.
Yes, no doubt
definitely.
about it. And we addressed this a couple weeks ago. I mean, is the depth good enough? No, absolutely not. And we talked about they need two interior
Yes.
defensive linemen from the portal. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I think Rubio, a healthy full-time Rubio, I think as he gets into his later years, how many years of eligibility does he have? Two, or
He's got one left. He's got one left.
he just has one left. I mean, I think that he can be a a competent quality starter, but is there, I mean, you're not going to match a Riley Mills and a Howard Cross on this current roster. We're talking about, I mean, Jason Onye, I don't know that he's ever going to be back. Donovan Heinisch is 25 pounds away from being 300 pounds. Your next wave is Armel Mukum and Sean Sevillano. I think there's some ability there. We haven't heard a lot of positive things about Devin Houston making progress. And then I like Cole Mullins. I liked him a lot.
So
But
he's got to be hurt, right?
big.
He has to be hurt. He doesn't dress. I don't see him out there. Cole
Oh,
Mullins. somebody had
I'm not. I
Cole
haven't even
Mullins.
been aware of that. He's
Yeah.
so shy, so shy on weight. No, you need two, and maybe a third out of Harvard.
Yeah, the Chris Smith type
Yeah.
I talk about.
Right,
I know what you're
right.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think kind of to your point, like, and there's no kind of young recruit. There's no, I mean, we'll say maybe Bryce Young could get too big and have to move over, but there's no young, talented guy who hasn't been proven that you're like, well, he has the talent. Maybe he could kind of really step up there. I know they like Armel Mukum a lot, but I don't think we see him as that either. So there's not really even somebody like, well, we want to see what this guy can do first before we kind of make that assessment either. So
Realistically, I think you need someone better than Rubio and almost as good as Rubio. And then you have that guy, Rubio, that guy, and Heinisch. And then you can have Sevillano and Mukum helping you out. Would that be realistically enough?
You've got a couple guys coming in. Solsted's an interior defensive line there. I don't believe that there's a plug and play freshman coming in. So that has to be priority number one on the entire team.
Yeah. There's no doubt in it. There's no doubt it's
Yeah.
number one.
Yeah. So, and that's they've recruited themselves into this situation. Al Washington, the defensive line coach, has recruited himself into this situation. And
it's worse if Onye does not come back.
Yeah, every time that we've addressed this question before, we thought that, okay, Onye was making progress. I'm not sure he made the kind of progress that we expected early in this season, and now he's not part of the equation. So
I'd love to have him on next year's team when we're reading off these names.
No doubt about it.
Other than Rubio, he's better than the rest of the names we just read.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Question from Steve_Duty28. Is there any consideration going around with NBC about moving the Florida State game to an afternoon game?
Go ahead, Drew.
I mean, not that I know. I mean, the only thing I looked at is Alabama LSU does play at the same time, which maybe they would not want that to be going on at the same time. But these things are set way in advance for a reason. So
yeah, Notre Dame doesn't do that. Now is the equation's a little bit different with NBC picking up the Big Ten, but we haven't heard anything about this.
I haven't heard anything about it. Yeah.
The Big Ten games next week, Michigan at IU, that has some appeal to it. If you wanted to move that, Washington at Penn State, Maryland at Oregon, but we don't. Notre Dame games, when they're set, they're set. And again, the equation is different with the Big Ten, but we have not heard anything along these lines. Prepare for a 7:30 kickoff on November 9th.
The plus is we discussed it. There's a bonus to this. It'll be a better atmosphere for the recruits. Notre Dame wouldn't want to move it now. There's no way they'd want to move it now, just to make the three of us have more convenient evenings. I mean, I think this is pretty clear that they want this to be a night game, or you could have a dead stadium. That's no fun.
No. We have a question from Maltese Irish. Do you have any info or update on the status health of Mitch Jeter?
I do not. He did not warm up. He was holding his helmet again. I didn't watch every minute of Mitch Jeter on the field, but when they were in uniform, he was holding his helmet during warmups. That, of course, will be 2 weeks away from the next time he goes to warm up before a game.
Yeah, we'll have a better idea, obviously, next Monday. We don't have any contact with any formal contact with the staff or the football team this week, so we'll know more on Monday. Drew, I don't think have you heard any input on Mitch Jeter?
I haven't. No.
Yeah, no.
They need him as a field goal kicker instead of Zach Yoakum, and Goins can handle kickoffs to not let Jeter get hurt again.
Yeah, but Goins isn't doing. He's not doing.
Tim, I was sitting by you, and I was with you. I was thinking the same thing. I don't know if he was trying to boot them into the end zone. against Navy. Navy has a
Well,
poor
maybe
kickoff
not.
return team. I don't think he was trying to
Okay.
do that. I want to ask Freeman. Or not Freeman. Don't waste that question at the press conference. I'm going to ask Marty Biaggi that question. I don't think he was trying to do it because he easily did it against Stanford and most of the time against Georgia Tech.
But you did want that against Georgia Tech, and he wasn't easily putting the football in the end zone with Eric Singleton Jr. returning kicks. And Florida State has good kick return. It has good kick returners. So that's an issue. And yet, even if you get Jeter back, do you want him kicking off?
That's
Just
what I'm saying. I don't want him kicking off. That was my point. Is he shouldn't probably.
Excuse me. Question from Irish from A2. Does Mike Mickens have an understanding that he is the defensive coordinator in waiting? If Golden leaves for the NFL after this year or next, will being named the DC just be a formality for Mickens?
I mean, if Al
So
Golden leaves, I think. Go ahead, Drew.
Oh, I just went back and looked. It was almost a year ago today that somebody asked Marcus Freeman about this in a press conference, and he said, "I absolutely think Mike Mickens is ready to be a defensive coordinator. That's why we gave him the passing game coordinator title during the offseason. He's a tremendous football coach schematically and in the fundamentals of playing the cornerback position." So I'm not saying it'd just be a formality if they did the search, but I think he's been saying stuff like that for a while, and he wouldn't say it just because either. So he could answer the question a little differently if he just wanted to not insult him.
I'm glad you pull up that quote, Drew. But to say formality, I wouldn't go so far as to say that, because you'd have to check the surroundings and see who would actually be available at that time. But it certainly seems like it's trending in that direction.
Yeah, I don't think you don't do formalities at Notre Dame for coordinator positions. He's the first interview, and you have to interview someone else. But it would be rough not to hire Mike Mickens as your defensive coordinator if you lose Al Golden, because he's developed the best unit on the football team from the worst unit on the football team over a 3 or 4 year period. Yeah. Notre Dame's corners could not compete 4 years ago with the elite teams. Now that their reserves are doing it. I mean, he's done a great job. I don't know what else you could do.
Absolutely.
To do that.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you interview someone that's, if there's the next Al Golden's out there, but I think it's Mike Mickens' job.
As a cornerbacks coach, absolutely tremendous. As a defensive coordinator, it's a little bit unknown, but as you say, Drew, when you hear, I mean, you can, Marcus Freeman doesn't have to offer that commentary. He could gloss over it. And so when you make comments like that, he would know better than anyone whether Mike Mickens was ready to coordinate a defense. Now, whether he was talking about Notre Dame's defense, that's why I say it's not necessarily a formality, but he's certainly trending in that direction. His job with the cornerbacks, good Lord, just outrageously good.
Safeties are great too. He's a safeties coach.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to give Chris O'Leary credit for developing Xavier Watts. But I think
Don Schuler is.
But yeah, Don Schuler, and I don't know how much O'Leary had to do with that. Watts has gone to another level. So yeah, again, more kudos for Mike Mickens. We're going to end with a question from Judge Arthur Vandelay, getting away from Notre Dame a little bit here. Predictions straight up for the following games: Ohio State at Penn State. There's a handful here. We'll go one at a time.
I took the points with Penn State because of the extra half point there, but I think second guessing myself, even though I agree with Pete Sampson, there's something up with Ohio State. There's something not right about Ohio State right now. I do not really like Penn State, so I think I will take Ohio State straight up.
I went with Penn State straight up. Kind of same thing. I mean, I just don't trust Ohio State in this game. I understand, like, I'm not. It's not like I think Penn State is actually the third best team in the country, like they're ranked. But if I had to pick, especially since it's at Penn State, that's how I'm going to go.
I like the under. It's 45.5. That's what I like. Drew Eller is probably a game time decision on this. Penn State's had great difficulty beating Ohio State and Michigan, but as you say, Ohio State's struggling. I think that half point, I know the question was about straight up, but I think that half point's real crucial, Tim, and I understand it. It's a noon game. It's not a night game, which is Who was I hearing?
That's a bad break for what Penn State in the whiteout because
Oh
that
no,
played
yeah, no doubt. I think it was.
nuts.
I think I heard Jimbo Fisher on Sirius XM that said, "Who in the world put this game at noon?" And rightfully so. But that in itself is a break for Ohio State. I don't like picking this game, but I like the under at 45.5. Texas A&M -2.5 at South Carolina.
Honestly, if we were just doing a pick these 4 games on a pool, I would just pick the 4 home games and go 2-2. To be totally honest with you, like I wouldn't pick them singularly. I would just go down the board home. The South Carolina game is a Tim O'Malley favorite special for A&M to fall into a not having a great game after having such a huge victory over LSU. Um, man, Elko really has them rolling. So going against what I said, I would take all 4 home teams. I've already taken 2 road, but if I really, honestly, I would just pick all 4 home teams and go away. But I think he avoids the letdown and they go play well. I think there might be more of a letdown if they were home against South Carolina. How's that?
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Texas A&M and well,
Yeah.
although I do acknowledge that South Carolina. It's also probably a better opponent than we've seen. I mean, 2 of their losses are against they're at Alabama and versus LSU, and they lost by 3 and 2 points. So even some of their losses aren't that bad. They did get blown up by Ole Miss, but they've won a decent amount of games and they've played some of their losses pretty competitively. So
The spread's 2.5 for a reason too. It's not 3.5. It's not. I mean, it just seems so easy to take A&M, but I'm really
Yeah.
impressed with what Elko has done to turn them around because they did not look like they had an offense that could turn around when we were there.
Yeah. Well, Marcel Reed.
Yeah,
Marcel Reed was a massive difference maker last week
yeah,
against LSU, and he wasn't even a consideration when we were previewing that game. I,
yeah. That
I,
could be a slight cause for concern because part of me wonders, I don't know this, that LSU just wasn't prepared for him. Because if you go back and look at Reed against Arkansas where he started, I think he averaged, this is probably sack adjusted, but or not sack adjusted, but it's like 1.3 yards or yeah, 1.3 yards per carry. So they were when they prepared for him, they did have some success limiting him, and then LSU just seemed like they couldn't
yeah, he
figure
started
that out
he
there.
started 3 games shortly after Notre Dame played
Mhm.
Texas A&M. The wise choice here is don't pick this game. There
Yeah,
are other
no.
games.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's forced into picking this game, based upon whatever pool he's in or whatever. But
Maybe he's not a gambling degenerate. He just wants our opinion on college football. That could be the thing, too,
perhaps,
these are ranked teams.
my opinion is don't pick the game. Louisville at number 11, Clemson. Clemson is a 10-point favorite at home.
Clemson.
I was gonna go Louisville, but I think they can score with them, and I don't think this Clemson defense is as good. But then it is at Clemson, and we saw what happened last year, even with Notre Dame too. So I think it might be closer than what it seems, and I think Louisville is probably a little more comparable, but I don't think they're going to beat Clemson at Clemson ultimately.
Yeah,
So
straight up, there's no decision to be made here. It's Clemson. And then finally, a game that I like here, Pittsburgh, number 18 against, or I should say at number 20, SMU. SMU is a 7.5-point favorite.
I mean, straight up, I'm taking SMU.
yeah, SMU as well.
Yeah, I like a million times. Not a million times. I love SMU in this game. Absolutely straight up. 7.5 is a little rich. But if you're asking about straight up, I definitely think SMU. SMU's good, man. We knew going into the season. If you didn't know going into the season SMU was good, then you just weren't following that closely enough. They've lost one time. Pittsburgh's undefeated. I think it's tailor-made for SMU.
All right,
Well,
Judge
they
Arthur
beat
Vandelay,
Duke.
$5 parlay. I'm taking all 4 home teams with the spread.
Straight. Oh, with the spread.
Yes, to cover and to cover the 2 underdogs.
Oh, O'Malley's dangerous, man. He's dangerous.
Nice.
I'm telling you. I'm lousy at this. O'Malley's dangerous. All right, we're going to wrap up there. We appreciate you joining us, and we ask that if you, have enjoyed our podcast, to become a member of irisillustrated.com and check us out, of course, on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all of those things where we are featured speaking at you, speaking with you. We appreciate you joining us today. This has been Irish Illustrated Insider.